Awesome. And we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Stripe Developer Office Hours. My name is Cecil Philip. I'm a developer advocate here at Stripe. And today, we're going to be learning about how you can build domain specific agents using natural language with a product called Hypermode. And I have my friend here, William, who works at Hypermode, and he's going to tell us all about it. So, William, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey everyone, and hey Cecil, thanks for hosting today. This is great. Yeah, my name's Will. I work at Hypermode in the developer experience team. So really, my goal is to make sure that users are successful building AI applications with Hypermode, whether that be our cloud tooling or our open source projects, and really spend a lot of time working with customers, getting customer feedback and building demos, writing docs, just kind of making sure folks are successful in general.
Nice. So I definitely want to dive into hypermode and also this idea of creating agents with natural language is actually very fascinating to me and very different. So, but before we do that, I do have a few updates that I want to share. So I'm going to bring my screen up and let's just go through a quick round of some of the things that have been happening within the Stripe ecosystem. So first off, I want to head over to our docs page. This is over at docs.stripe.com. And under our developer resources section, we have, this little article that talks about our Stripe MCP server. Now, our MCP server has been out for a few months now, but one of the things that I wanted to point out is that we now have a remote MCP server. So, in addition to you being able to run it locally over standard IO, you can head over to HTTPS and go to mcp.stripe.com, and then you can start interacting with our remote MCP server. And then notice here we have options here for you to install it in Cursor and VS Code and Cloud Code. And then we also show you how you could use things like OAuth and or even Bearer token to be able to authenticate your agents with that. So for folks that are interested in using our remote MCP server, definitely recommend that you head over to the docs and check that out. All right, so moving forward, next thing we're going to talk about over on our Stripe developers YouTube channel. Most of y'all should be watching us on YouTube now, but some of you aren't. But if you head over to the channel, we did release a video recently. This one's called Unmasking Modern Fraud from Card Testing to AI Exploits. Now, a lot of folks know Stripe as a company that we do a lot of process payments and transfer money and things of that nature. But we've actually been using AI for quite a while, and we have a product called Stripe Radar, which is our fraud detection product, and it kind of just works in the background detecting different types of fraud and card testing and different types of exploits people might want to carry out against your Stripe account. So in this particular interview, Yushin, she's a product manager for the Stripe Radar product, and she's just kind of telling us about like how they use models and AI and some of those types of things to help detect fraud and different types of exploits or even manage risk inside of your application. So if you're interested in learning about that aspect of it and how Stripe uses AI from that perspective, definitely head over and take a look at that. That's over on our Stripe developers YouTube channel. Um, One other thing I want to call out super quick is our friends at Temporal. They just released a new tutorial over on their website. This one's called How to Build a Durable AI Agent with Temporal and Python. Now, folks might be asking, well, why are you telling us this about Temporal? Well, this tutorial actually uses Stripe. And so it shows how to build durable agents using Python, using Temporal, and using Stripe. And so definitely recommend that you all check this out, give it a read, and let us know what you think about it. And last but not least, I definitely always have to make sure I give a shout out to our meetup program. My teammate Ben spends a lot of time curating these and putting these on across, different cities and different Stripe offices all around the world. So, if folks are interested in joining us in person for one of our meetup programs, the next two that we're having, sadly, we don't have any that's happening in August. Our next two are going to be in September. So September 16th will be in London, in the London office, and then September 18th will be in the Dublin office. So if any of you folks that are watching happens to be in any of those places, definitely feel free to come by, hang out, uh, and even if you interested in giving a talk or presenting or sharing some of the cool things that you're building with Stripe, you're always more than welcome to come over and check this out. And again, this is over on our Meetup Pro site. I think it's meetup.com/pro/stripe. Now, That being said, I'm gonna pull my screen off because now it's no longer the Cecil show. This is all about hypermode and how we're gonna build like these agents. So, well, why don't you give me a quick, give me like the 30-second pitch. Like what is hypermode exactly? Like, what do you do? Like, what's the core business of the company?
Yeah, so the goal of Hypermode really is to build developer tooling and infrastructure for putting AI applications in production. We've been around for a couple years now, and what we're focused on now, and what we're going to talk about today, is the Hypermode agents tooling. So this is a sort of hosted agents platform for building domain specific agents from natural language, and I think there's two like really important key aspects there that are maybe a little bit different from other AI agent tooling or AI agent platforms that you may have seen. One is this
Yep.
idea of domain specific. So the idea that I want to build a marketing agent. I want to build. Today we're going to look at like a finance operations agent. And the other piece is that we do this with natural language. So rather than writing code, we describe like the role background of our agent in natural language, and that combined with connections added via MCP servers, which give our agents the ability to like understand, act on their environment on our behalf. And then our goal is to have like a really nice user experience for hosting, managing these agents. We call this like your team of interns is kind of the way I think of it, right? That you're sort of describing the role and background that you want a specific agent to accomplish maybe a handful of tasks. You give them a handful of tools to do that, and you work with many different agents together to sort of help you in your day to day.
So when you think about the audience that hypermode is focused on, I know when folks say developer, developer actually is like a wide range of folks. Like we have the no code folks, and we have the folks that are like, I'm building hardware and I'm writing the programming language that runs the hardware, right? Like we have various spectrums of that. Who would you say is like the core audience of folks that you're targeting with, what your guys are building at Hypermode?
Yeah, I think with hypermode agents, we're really targeting those like domain experts, right? Maybe you're a marketing professional, maybe you're a sales professional. These are two that we've had a lot of interest and success with recently. So that's why I mentioned those two. And we want to be able to give you the tooling and ability to use AI in your day to day, and then gradually adopt that like through your team. I think in a lot of the discussions that we've had with users, they know they want to be using AI to be more productive, and oftentimes it's very confusing, just like where to get started.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to make that easier. So for example, let's say you're an accounting executive, and maybe you're like a managing a team of account executives. Like there are lots of ways that you could be using AI tooling to improve your sort of day to day. Maybe it's like analyzing call transcripts and applying like a lead scoring framework to that. Maybe it's
Right.
giving feedback to the account executive based on that. So those are the sort of workflows that we enable for sales folks. For marketing, it's a lot of like content generation. How can
Yeah.
I connect to different services that I use in my marketing stack? That sort of thing.
Okay. So I mean, almost pretty much almost anyone then, right? Like if you want to build like some type of integration using agents. So even if I'm not a coder, right? Like let's say like I'm a BA and maybe I have like a requirements document, I have a spec, right? Like I can probably, talk to Hypermode, right? Like I could talk to the agent and it could, we could start going through different prompts and iterating on the process and probably build out like different features or applications of things of that nature, right? But essentially like you're almost giving everyone the superpower to be able to build software, right? Like if you can speak, right? Like you can build agents essentially is what we're talking about here.
Totally, yeah. If you can describe the role and backgrounds of the intern agent that you want to create, who's going to act on your behalf, then you can create your agent team. And I think a lot of folks can be a little bit intimidated by this idea of like prompting and oh, I need to create like a system prompt for my agent that has this like very structured format. One of the approaches we took is actually creating an agent to build your agent.
Mm,
We call this the Hypermode concierge. And so rather than having to write this like very well structured um, system prompt that's guiding your agent, we have kind of a conversational sort of interview process as you're describing the type of agent you want to create. The concierge is asking you, what brand does this represent? It's going to like go and do web search to add relevant context and branding. You can give it like example writing styles they can then fetch and sort of iteratively build all this into the system prompt for your agent that's ultimately driving sort of the goals and tasks for the agent.
nice. So why don't we jump into a demo? Could you show us really quick like what hypermode looks like and how we can kind of get started?
Absolutely. I'm gonna share my screen here. And so this is the landing page for Hypermode. There's kind of some examples of kind of what we just talked about, right? Of creating agents
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. Um, there's a login button here to sign in, and this is what that looks like. So we'll go through kind of the like getting started experience. If folks want to follow along, you can just go to hypermode.com and log in. You'll see here this unlock Hypermode Pro button. In a minute, I'm going to share a code that you can use to upgrade to free pro tier for Hypermode for anyone watching the stream. Um, but let's take a look at what you can do with kind of the free tier. So by default, this is the threads view. And so here we can see all of our conversations across all of our agents, right? I said earlier, we were talking about this idea of creating domain specific agents. So that are focused on sort of a certain role. So our team is going to be composed of many agents. So we're going to have lots of threads with different agents. We have the agents view here, and we can see we only have access to one agent, which is the Sidekick agent that has access to Google Calendar. I've already configured this. If you haven't added Google Calendar, there'll be like a button here prompting you to do that. And that connection, that's powered by MCP, Model Context Protocol. And so that is a way to give tools to the agent to connect to services on your behalf. Cecil was mentioning like the Stripe MCP at the top of the call, and kind of highlighting some new features in that. We'll take a look at using the Stripe MCP in a minute, but that's really the way that Hypermode agents gives the ability for the agents to like understand and act on their environment is by connecting to these services via MCP that expose tools to the agent.
So
Does that make
quick
sense, or
question
should
about
we
that
should we
then.
drill down into?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Quick question about that though. So what is there a catalog of services that I have access to, or can I bring my own services or tools? Like how does like the tool collection aspect of it work?
Yeah, totally. So I'll jump over to the docs here. And docs in connect your agent. So drop a link to this page if folks want to check this out in the chat. Um, we have over 2,000 connections, that 2,000 MCP servers that we support. That's a lot of things. So we try to curate these a little bit as something I've been working on in the docs over the last few weeks. And so we kind of broken these out by category, right? So CRM, if you're like the sales example I talked about, you probably want to connect to something like Adio, HubSpot, Salesforce. If you're a developer working with databases, or things like GitHub, these sorts of things, marketing, your maybe like social media, those kind of things. So there are lots of different tools you can add. I've been working on trying to create more detailed guides that sort of show how you can connect to these things and how you can use them. So, for example, in the Stripe example, we have kind of a guide that shows how to go through setup and what that looks like, how you can sort of add some sample data and this sort of thing. So that's a good resource to give you an idea, at least, of kind of
Nice.
like what's possible.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I'll drop a
And I'm
link to
guessing
that
people can bring
Stripe
their
one in the
own as
chat too.
well, right? Like I'm guessing people can bring their own MCP if they wanted to.
That's not something we currently support in like the hosted Hypermode agents. I
Hmm.
think that we're really focused on having like a really high quality user experience, and so we haven't opened it up for like a bring your own MCP quite yet. But something we're thinking about
Okay,
for
that
sure.
makes sense.
We're definitely open to suggestions and requests. Like I think we're really in this phase now where we have some users that are using this for real world workflows, but we're really wanting to understand like what are people wanting to build with this? What like are there other services, other MCPs that they want to add that we don't support?
Got it. Okay, that's fair.
So let's take a look what we can do with Sidekick. So Sidekick can connect to Google Calendar, and that can be useful for like helping us prepare for the week, planning, maybe researching like who I'm meeting with, that kind of thing. I travel a bit for work, so let's ask it, where am I traveling over the next 2 weeks? And now our agent is going to look at the tools that it has available, and in this case there are some built-in tools like web search and these sorts of things, but because we've authorized Google Calendar, it has access to my calendar and the tools exposed through MCP to access my calendar on my behalf. Think of the tools as like functions or like API endpoints, sort of that our agent could call. And so it called this list events. And when the agent or the model calls the tool, it also needs to generate some parameters to like as you would generate parameters for a function call. And so the parameters it passed in are kind of a beginning and end representing like the next 2 week period, because that's what I asked for. And it comes back with a lot of things. I have like a bunch of things on my calendar, right? I have meetings, I have reminders from my wife to take out the trash, but I have my flights, and so that's how the agent's determining like, okay, I see some flights. You're going to Seattle tomorrow, then you're coming back to San Francisco, then going to Austin, then I come back a few days later, and wants to be a helpful agent, like suggesting things that we can do. Let's say, why am I traveling to Seattle? And we can see here that because it fetched all the events, says, oh, well, you're going to Seattle to attend and host this AI Hack and Quack event, co-hosted by Hypermode and MotherDuck at MotherDuck's office. You're a host. Like, here's what we're going to do at the event. Like, okay, that's cool. Which, by the way, I will use this as an opportunity for anyone in Seattle. We are doing an event with MotherDuck, if folks are familiar
Oh, nice.
with Mother Duck. So I will shamelessly drop a link to that in the chat. This should be super fun. If you're familiar with Mother Duck, it's the folks that are building sort of a cloud service around DuckDB,
Mm,
and we recently added Mother Duck support into Hypermode agents. So we're going to do a little hackathon around using Hypermode agents and building agents around DuckDB and Mother Duck. So if you're in Seattle, definitely try to make that tomorrow.
that's awesome. And then this is this Friday, right? So Thursday. Well, actually, this is tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah, exactly.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Tomorrow evening, yeah, it's a evening event.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. If we have any folks that are watching, any of you that are in the Seattle area, definitely feel free to go ahead and hang out with our friends from Hypermode and Mother Duck.
Mother Duck has a really fun office right on the water too. It's very
Yeah.
cool. But let's ask our agent like where maybe can we go to dinner nearby after the AI hack and quack.
No, that's the
And
important question to ask.
that's right. And by dinner, I really mean like where can we go get some drinks afterwards? Uh, and so here we're using one of the built-in tools. So we're using a web search tool. We have a few different web search tools. Like we use Exa. We have several different, I guess, tools and services that we use for web search. One of them is Exa, which has tools also for like research paper um, summaries and that sort of search, and some search for specific sites, which is interesting.
Okay. So like one of those is like a scholarly peer-reviewed article kind of search, and the other one is just kind of like a general search tool. Is that kind of the way you think about it?
Yeah, exactly. So I could say something like, I don't know, summarize um, the top papers on, I don't know, knowledge graphs for agent memory.
Hmm.
And we can see here, after it decides what tool to use, that here it's using this research paper search tool, whereas before the tool it used was just a general web search. There's also a like a web crawling. If you have like a page that lists a bunch of subpages, this is really handy for using this for like crawling documentation the other day. You can say like, I don't know, fetch all the information on like these different services like linked on the main documentation landing page. And so
Yeah.
we'll start with web search and then do like web crawling to hit all of those links, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay,
But yeah,
that makes sense.
here's our example for suggestions for research papers, that sort of thing.
But I'm guessing hypermode automatically makes the choice of switching for you, right? Like we don't have to say use this tool or the other. It's just kind of in there, and then it makes the choice of I'm going to use this search facility versus the other one.
Yeah, and specifically, it's the model that's making the decision on which tools to call based on the system prompt for the agent, which we don't see what the system prompt is, I think, for this agent, but we'll see what that looks like when we create an agent, and also based on the user message and also like the context that we've built up. And we have the ability in Hypermode to select different models. With
Yeah.
Sidekick, we're using, I think, GPT-4.1 as the default, but I'm going to upgrade us to Pro tier here, and we'll see lots of different models we can select. And oftentimes it depends on the use case. Like the Claude Sonnet models are really good at, say, like writing code. GPT-4.1 is a really good general purpose. The Gemini models are pretty good at writing documents and this sort of thing. So you might choose different models based on what you're trying to accomplish. And so we could go a little bit further on this. Like, I don't know, I could ask it to create a calendar event and invite people to join us at wherever we're going to go for dinner. But let's take a look at something a little more interesting. So far we've been using the free tier of Hypermode agents, which just has this one sidekick agent. What I want to do now is upgrade us to Pro tier. So I'm going to click this Unlock Pro button, and for anyone watching the stream or following along, I think this is the code I created, HYP stripe. You can use that to upgrade for free to Pro tier. They'll
Nice.
be give you at least a month free of Pro tier while we're in beta. And so the first thing you'll notice is there's a new agent that shows up in our agent list, which is this Hypermode concierge and agent builder. So let's use that to create a new agent. There's two ways to create an agent, right? I can just go here to create new agent and start to describe like the system prompt and choose what model I want to use. But I was talking earlier about not really knowing like where to get started, and the idea of an agent to create your agent. So that's where Hypermode Concierge and Agent Builder comes in. This is an agent to walk us through the process of creating an agent and kind of understanding like how we can build up this system prompt without really having to understand like what is a system prompt. So I have kind of a little couple sentences I'm just going to paste in here instead of watching me typo over things. But this
Okay.
says, let's build a financial operations agent that can process payments, handle refunds, create
Yeah.
invoices, analyze financial data using Stripe. And I had a little bug there, so we'll try that again. And then also, I want to be able to work with our internal policies in Notion to make decisions about refunds, right? So, a couple important aspects here is like I'm saying, describing like the role and background for our agent, right? I want it to be a financial operations agent. I'm kind of describing a little bit about the tasks I want it to do. And then I'm hinting at what connections are going to be most relevant, right? So I said Stripe, and I said Notion, and hopefully Concierge will walk us through that.
So, well, quick question too, as you're doing that. So for the prompt window, is there like a is it like a limit to the amount of text that you can put in there, or not so much so? Like, is there context limitations based on that text box?
There is, right. It sort of depends on the model that we're using, and depends on kind of the context that you've built up over time.
Yeah,
Um, I think models now have, and it also depends on like the result of your tool calls, because that also builds up context over time.
mm,
Um, and I think that models have very very large context now, and so I run into this occasionally. It's usually when I am returning lots of data from tool calls that I kind of run into issues there. So that's always one thing to think about, is like if you're working with one of these like database tools, and you inadvertently return a ton of data, just remember like that stays in your context.
got it. Okay, okay. And then as we look at that left side too, like there's different threads, right? So you can have, these different conversations kind of happening, multiple conversations happening on different times, and you can kind of just switch between those contexts.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. So here, as I have my sort of team of agents, I'll have like lots of threads across different agents I'm working with, or I can kind of zero in on one agent and focus on like the threads for that specific agent.
Got it.
Let me show the other way of creating an agent other than concierge, which is just kind of manually defining my agent. So I'm going to call our agent Stripe Sleuth, who is going to be a financial ops expert. And agent's headline is going to be finance ops professional. And this is a prompt that I worked with Concierge to create earlier. So if we kept going with Concierge in that other thread, we'd end up with something like this, where there's sort of like the identity that describes like the role for the agent, and then some context based on the questions that Concierge is going to ask me. So it's going to ask you like, hey, do you represent a specific company or brand? Is this you? We'll say
Right.
this is Hyper Hula, some, I don't know, some made up company, and then we're saying, hey, like when you do any sort of like refund decision, be sure to consult our like internal policies. You can find them on this Notion pad, and so on. The other piece is, as we were talking about earlier, is choosing the model. Um, it's interesting. Like I've gotten a lot of feedback here from folks too, that choosing the model is a little overwhelming, right? Like folks want to know, well, does it matter? Like if I choose one over the other? And my recommendation is start with GPT 4.1 of the ones we support, right? We have several like GPT models, the Claude models, Gemini models. I'd say start with GPT 4.1. That's kind of a good general purpose model.
Right. I love the fact too that you give folks the option to choose between. which model they're using too. Um, so it's like I pay for, whatever pro subscription we get from Hypermode, but then I still have the choice of choosing whatever model kind of works best for me. So now I could have one thread using, let's say, Claude model, and another one using Gemini, and another one using Open API if I wanted to. Open AI, I'm sorry, if I wanted to. So I love the fact that we have that option of flexibility.
Totally. And I think that's a key part of this idea of like the domain specific agent is that um, for some domains, like a certain model is going to be better than another. Like if I'm a coding agent or generating database queries, then I'm probably going to prefer the Claude Sonnet models. If I'm generating content for, say, like a marketing agent, I'm going to prefer the Gemini models. And you can switch those too, right? So like after I've created an agent, I can always go back and switch that. And I can also, this I think is important too, is the user prompt that you're building up is iterative too. Like oftentimes, if you have an unexpected experience with your agent where it doesn't quite do what you want it to do, or you want to give it like some specific context, oftentimes we want to update the instructions here, which we can think of as like the system prompt for our agent. Before we can start using our agent to work with Stripe, we need to add the Stripe connection. So I just clicked on add connection and we'll search for Stripe. You can see like a lot of the other things, a lot of the other connections we support here. And this just added to my agent because I already generated an API key and dropped that in. The doc I linked earlier, which I'll drop in the chat again for folks that are just joining, like this walks through how to create an API key for your Stripe account, including like a restricted one that has access to certain permissions, and the process for creating an agent that has access to that, and kind of some things you can do. So that's a good resource if you're curious how to sort of get started adding the connection. And let's take a look here. So here's my Stripe dashboard. This is a sandbox. We use Stripe internally, of course, at Hypermode. So I just created a sandbox test environment, and I actually populated all of this using a Hypermode agent the other day, just kind of chatting with it. So if we take a look, I can see like what's my product catalog. Oh, I've got some subscriptions and like a one-time fee. I've got some transactions here, and that's all just sample data that we're going to play around with. This is a good way, I think, to get started playing around with agents. I wouldn't recommend just jumping in and using your production data. Always a good idea just to create the sandbox environment. But we can say, let's say, show me all my customers. I like to start out with something just to kind of test our connection, make sure we're able to access whatever service we're working with, and in this case, Stripe. And so we're going to start off by calling the list customers tool. And again, the way that this agent knows, right? Like, notice that my user message here is quite terse.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, show me the customers. And so the agent with its instructions, like that's how it knows how to go to Stripe, right? I've said like your role is working with Stripe based payments, use Stripe data, these sorts of things. And then also it knows like what tools that it has available to it. So that's kind of how it knows, oh, I can find customers from this list customers tool. We're talking about like the importance of natural language, and so far we've talked about it in the context of like creating our agent, but natural language is like all sort of throughout the stack when we're working with LLMs. The MCP servers, like they expose their tools in natural language, right? So there are natural language descriptions of what this function does, also natural language description of the parameters that need to be generated. And so somewhere for this list customers tool is a natural language description of what it does that the model is able to understand when to call that tool based on based on the user message.
One of the things I was curious about when we first got to schedule was I was wondering I was wondering if I could actually talk to it. Like I was wondering if I could use voice other than the text box as well. And then because I'm imagining these scenarios where this is probably not a good idea. Just I want to preface that. But I can imagine these scenarios where I'm just kind of I'm outside and I'm walking around or I'm wherever I am and ideas kind of just hit you in random parts of your day. And I'd usually use a voice note or some type of audio, right, to like record the thing that I was thinking about. um is there a scenario or a situation where I could like upload a voice notes or like even talk to it like with my voice and be like, hey, these are the things I'd like for you to do for me, like could you execute this, or like can we do those types of things with this, or would that be hyper mode plus the addition of like some additional third party app, again like the voice notes app or something like that, to make that happen?
So, I mean, you could certainly use, I think, like the built-in dictation features to like dictate the input
Sure.
here. We don't currently have kind of like the ability to do like text to speech or that sort of voice chat in Hypermode
Right.
itself. It's been a like requested feature, but both for like input and output as well. So it's certainly something we're aware of that folks are interested in. I think
Mhm.
especially when you were looking at like the different domains for different types of users, there are lots of users, and I'm thinking of maybe like the I don't know, like a sales type role here, where maybe you're traveling a lot to go on customer visits at offices and that sort of thing, and you have a lot of what do they call it? Like the windshield time, right? Where you're driving a lot, and you want to just have your phone and you schedule some calls there. But yeah, it'd be great to be able to just talk to your agent. And so definitely something we're looking at that's on the radar.
Okay, cool, awesome. And then we did have a question, folks that are in the chat. I am not ignoring you, I promise. We did have a question that pops into the chat. Someone was asking, and I'm gonna bring this up. They were saying any use cases that you could build today regarding managing refunds would be a winner. And I was just thinking, I don't know if our MCP server supports refunds. That'll be a good thing for us to go check out. So I think I'm going to take a look at that really quick. But that was a question that popped in from a user on Twitter. Just I'm sorry, user on YouTube just now.
Nice, cool. Yeah, I think we can take a look at that in the demo here. Maybe we'll build up to that one.
Yeah.
That one's a little more complex. And I should say that we aren't using the official. At least I don't think the official Stripe MCP server. We actually
Oh.
use a bit more of a custom one
Hmm.
that I think wraps the Stripe API. So there may be like a discrepancy if you're using the official Stripe MCP server and some of the tools that you're seeing here in Hypermode that may be a little bit different.
Now that is super interesting to me because I'd definitely love to hear. Like, let me let you finish your demo, but I'd definitely love to hear about that that different MCP server that you all created. So I'm gonna table that for now, and I'm gonna let you finish your demo.
And yeah, I'll say one thing about that, because I think this is again going back to like some of the key things of what we're focusing on at Hypermode is that like really crisp user experience.
Mhm.
And one thing that I think we realize like very quickly is that the thing that will make or break your agent is the quality of the MCP server.
Mhm.
And that, not to disparage the Stripe one. I know you guys have put a lot of effort into it, but I
Sure.
think that a lot of services maybe wrapped their existing API, and okay, there's like 200 endpoints in my API. I can like vibe code an MCP server that wraps that and put it out there. And I think that led to like quite a poor experience for an agent consuming the MCP versus a user consuming an API is a very different paradigm. For example, like if you're, I don't know, maybe an API for like a messaging service, your API endpoint, if you want to like post a message to a channel, maybe it takes an ID. Well, how does the agent know to get an ID? It needs to like search for that ID by the name of the
Yeah.
channel. And if there's 200 tools, like that can be very overwhelming to blow up sort of the choice paradigm for the model. Lots of models only support 128 tools, and so I think that's one of the things we're focusing on is like when needed, we're going to build and support and host custom MCPs for services that we know that folks want to be using, because I think that's a really important part of the user experience for agents.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I thought you were going to go with it, because I totally agree with the fact that I think I think when you look at MCP and you look at APIs, I think APIs are more fine grained and are built for carrying out tasks. I think the way that we want to, or the way that we're going to start looking at MCP is, instead of being a wrapper or a one-to-one wrapper over our APIs, more so we have to design them around the goal, right? And so if it's focused on the goal, then what an MCP server looks to you, even though it's working with the same service, might be completely different, because your goals are different, right? And like the kinds of things that you want to, kinds of prompts you wanted to run, the types of objectives you have might be completely different, right? So again, I might want to say, hey, go ahead and, you know, create this payment link and email the customer and do this, that, or the other, right? And then, but maybe I could just wrap that in a call, right? And that call has multiple tasks and it calls into multiple APIs, but it's one MCP tool. You see what I'm saying? So I think definitely, as we as like the industry start to mature a little bit more in terms of like how we want to use these things, like I think there's going to be more cases where people do create their own MCP servers. I think that'll be the norm, you know what I mean? In addition to using some of the, the company provided ones, I think more people will customize it because it's going to be based on the goal of whatever it is that your software or your application happens to be doing at the time.
Totally. Yeah. I think we're just starting to understand the best way to be exposing tools to our agents and through MCP. That seems a good way to do that now. But I think it's really largely about, as you say, like the tools and what you're actually trying to accomplish. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's see what else we can do here. So we called this list customers tool by like seeing all our customers. We have a handful. I can do things like, I don't know, create a new customer. I don't know, named Bob Fubar. Bob at example.com. So thinking in terms of like, why would I use this thing? What are certain like the roles in a company, and I think one is like customer support, sales, right? It's like anywhere that I'm sort of wanting to interact with Stripe data. I mean, Stripe really is like the heart of like the operations of my company, and so I feel like it touches like so many different personas.
Yeah.
So maybe we've signed up a new customer. We want to, be able to create that in this natural language chat. Like we've done that. If we go now to our dashboard, to customers, here's Bob Fubar that we just created. I'm going to add a payment method for him, because this is one thing I know that you can't do through the MCP server, is send credit card information, which I think makes a lot of sense. So we're going to go ahead and create a default payment method for him, and we'll set that as default. Cool. And if I look at my products, like I have basic plan, premium subscription, one-time setup. So let's go back to our chat here and say, create a subscription for Bob Fubar for the premium plan. And so now our agent has built up the context of the result of these tool calls, right? So I can just say the name of the customer, and it knows like the customer ID here from like the previous chat. So when it goes to create a subscription, it knows, okay, this is the ID of the user that we're talking about. And we weren't able to create the subscription. Because we don't know the price ID. Oh, it's set to a one-time price. So I probably configured my products incorrectly here. So it's asking like which price do we want to use. I think let's just pick one. I'll say that's the price to use. I must have set up like you can have multiple prices per product and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I love how too it returns the price ID to you as well, right? So then you'd also have to be like, oh man, what's the price for this price ID? Like what's the number attached to this? You know?
Right. Right. Yeah. And I could go look in the dashboard too, but cool. It looks like it did it. And I can say like, okay, let's I don't know, generate an invoice for Bob. And we can do that. And it may ask me like, hey, do you want to add other charges here? I think creating invoices and creating like custom invoices, there's a lot that goes into that, right? So one thing that we could do is if we notice that, oh, it just kind of makes some assumptions and just like fires off the invoice right away, I could go back into my instructions here and say, hey, before you create the invoice, let's have a discussion and let's ask like, okay, like, do I want to add other charges to it and that sort of thing to get more details. In this case, you create an invoice. There's the subscription. It's being charged automatically. Like, cool, good to go. So that's for, I don't know, maybe like a customer service type persona, or maybe like sales who's signing up new customers. But I also, maybe if I'm in sales or ops, I'm trying to understand like, are we near our goals for the month? So what is our current MRR? What's our current monthly recurring revenue, right? This is something I think that folks are looking at Stripe pretty frequently for. It's like, okay, like end of quarter, end of month is coming up. Like, where are we at? Our invoices being paid, or like what do subscriptions look like? And this can kind of be the impetus for, well, what can we do to close some deals? What can we do to drive more revenue? And so here, our agent, to answer this question of our current ARR, basically just going to look at all invoices that we have. So there's a couple of different ways it's offering to do that. Let's say yes, include all active subscriptions. And here we're going to like list the customers, and then I think we might have to look these up for each customer to try to identify what our MRR is. But this can be kind of like a check-in, sort of like towards the end of the month. And we might want to generate campaign ideas for
Right.
specific customers, or maybe looking at all of our sort of purchase history across all of our customers and products. Like, are there certain like upgrades that we could do? Could we offer, I don't know, maybe like discounts if people pay in advance, like these sorts of things, depending on what our goal is. And so right now, what we're going to do is, looks like we're fetching details for each customer to find all of their subscriptions. I was looking at this earlier, and it's interesting, like always when you're working with agents and these like non-deterministic systems, that there are lots of different ways to approach this. And when I was looking at this before, I think it actually called a subscription tool, which kind of in one tool call returned all the subscriptions and was able to calculate MRR that way. So again, this is the kind of thing where, instead of going through a bunch of tool calls, when we've learned a better way to do this, we might go back to our agent instructions, and say, like, hey, maybe in a capabilities section, like, instead of uh, looking up every single customer subscription when I ask for MRR, call this other tool that's going to be more productive. I think that, like I was saying earlier, we're kind of at like an intern level way of thinking about agents. So sometimes you have
Yeah.
to be like pretty descriptive when you're describing what you want them to do on your behalf.
Yeah. And then, well, while we wait on that, we do have a question that pops up on YouTube really quick. So, question is, can you connect the generation of the subscription to a trigger, or to trigger another tool? So, let's say like something gets created, and then something you kind of kick off something else. So, almost sounds like, can you do workflows? Pretty much is what it kind of sounds like. Is that a thing that you all support to some
I
extent?
probably I probably wouldn't do that in the agent. I would probably set up like a webhook in Stripe to do that, right? And that's one thing that we're currently looking at is better sort of API integrations,
Mhm.
so that you could say enable like an incoming webhook to invoke some task in your agent.
Yeah.
That is not something we currently support in the hosted agent experience. I should say, like, all of the agent stuff that I'm showing now is built on top of an open source agent framework that we created. That was actually what we started with, was building an agent framework like for developers, thinking our common use case was going to be agents creating, or developers creating agents with code using our framework. And like that functionality is there in the framework. So something we'll be adding soon to be able to, I think, take an incoming webhook, say when a subscription is created in Stripe, call some endpoint to kick off a task, and for your agent to then send that email, that sort of thing, for sure.
Okay, got it. Um, so you've mentioned this a few times, and that there's the hosted experience. So I'm guessing there means that there's a non-hosted experience. So I'm guessing developers have the option of writing code if they wanted to, and doing things locally, versus here, like we're actually doing like a little bit of context engineering, right? Like we're prompting our way to a thing. So I'm guessing with hypermode, like you have the option of doing one or the other if you wanted to.
Yeah, so I think I have an image here that kind of sums this up. The way we're thinking of this is there's kind of this like natural language um, entry point for creating agents, which we think of if you're the domain expert, if you're like a sales, marketing, finance, operations professional. Maybe this is where you want to start, is what we're looking at today with describing your agents in natural language. If you're like a developer, like an AI engineer, I guess, type of developer, where you really want to be working with like the open source agent orchestration framework. If you want to be working with the knowledge graph that powers this, the model invocations, that's where our open source framework comes in. It's called Modus. Just
Mhm.
looking at the docs here, and then we also build and maintain an open source graph database called dgraph,
Hmm.
which is important for this idea of context engineering. And uh, we use a version of dgraph that is embedded in each agent project that stores sort of the state and inference
Hmm.
history, sort of memory for the agent, essentially. So all those pieces are there if you want to go down that path. But I think what we found is like the getting started experience. I think for like the kind of customers we're having success with, of folks that like don't know where to start with AI, but they have some like specific role of agent that they want to create, that trying to have this like hosted nice UX, like a safe workspace where they know like they're not going to break anything. It's easy to share with their team. That's
Yeah.
I think what we're trying to focus on. I know we're short on time. Let me see if we can take a look at the question earlier who was asking about can we process refunds?
Yeah, I think that's what the first question we had.
So here's let's say we have a support ticket that comes in and it's like, hey, refund this transaction, and um, we purchased it 3 days ago, but it doesn't meet their needs. And we said in our, if we go back here to our instructions for the agent, we said that we're going to, for any refund decision, we're going to consult the internal policy in Notion. And so we need to give our agent access to Notion. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be another connection that we're going to add. And again, I've already gone through the OAuth workflow here, but if you're adding it for the first time, Notion has like really fine-grained controls on what pages you can add, what permissions you can give to them. But now our agent should have access to our Notion. Oh, and I should show what that looks like. So here's the refund policy. It's not trivial, right? So there's different criteria. So, depending on, which product you purchased, you're eligible for a refund, full refund within a certain amount of time. But then it also is going to depend on your payment history, right? Like if you're not a great customer, perhaps you don't pay your bill on time, perhaps you've had other refunds. Well, then, perhaps we're going to have to reduce the amount of your refund. And so our agent was able to fetch this page from our like internal knowledge base that has our refund policy, which you can see here. Like it knows to, okay, cool, I need to find the details for the policy. So that's what this tool call is here. And then it needs to look up the information about this customer. So we're starting with the payment intent. That's what this transaction is. It's the ID of a payment intent. Then we need to find the customer. We need to see, oh, well, have they had other refunds before? Have they paid their bill late before? So that's why we can see here that the agent is calling all these tools to fetch all the information that's going to go into determining how to apply this policy. And so the answer it comes back with is like, okay, this customer has a premium subscription, so they are eligible for a full refund. They have 2 previous refunds though, and so our policy says if you have 2 refunds in 12 months, then we're going to reduce your the amount of your refund. So they're only eligible for 70% of that full $29.99 refund. Let's see if we can process this.
Gotcha. Okay.
And now we're calling the create refund tool. And so again, this is like in the persona of maybe the customer support folks who have this ticket. They have a lot of different policies to apply, right? Maybe it's not just about refunds. Maybe it's other things like use your imagination, and we may have like a very large internal knowledge base that we want to bring in.
Yeah. But I love that how the scenarios, again, showing what I like to call like the Stripe Plus scenario, right? Like it's always great when you can have multiple tools coming together to solve the goal, right? Which is why I keep saying, like, I feel like we're going to start architecting things based on goals and not based on like CRUD endpoints. We're like what's the high level thing that we're trying to do, right? Like what are we having our support folks do, right? Like what are we having our agents and clerks, like our people in the physical world, like what is their job entail? And then now we're going to create like these agents and these MCP servers and like all these different tools focused around the goal, right? But that they kind of just abstract down to all those other like smaller, more those smaller, more specific tasks on the bottom.
Totally, yeah. And we can see here, oh, cool. So we've got the links for the hosted invoice or the PDF that our our customer service folks can then send in probably through the support ticket system. So, which is something we could have brought in here as well. Like maybe we're using Zendesk or something like that. We can
Hmm.
also we also have connections for Zendesk and these sorts of tools as well. So we could sort of provide all of those tools to our agent so that our customer service folks have them kind of at their fingertips. I think there's a lot of discussion about like, oh, agents are gonna, like replace, knowledge workers. And I don't think that's the case, because I think you still need the human in the loop to sort of make the ultimate decisions here. I think like agents and being able to combine these services just makes them better, more efficient at their job, so that ultimately you get better customer service, is I guess the end goal in this case.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think with whatever happens with agents going forward, like you're always going to need a human to have some level of emotion towards making the decision, right? Because I think there's the rules, there's the handbook, there's the guidelines, and then there's the person that's sitting in front from you, and you might be like, okay, well, I'm gonna give you a chance this time, right? Or I'm gonna, you've been a long time customer. I'm gonna, we're gonna brush this one to the side for a second. Like, you gotta give your customers, particularly your repeat customers, like certain amounts of like allowances. But at the end of the day, you still want to be able to like quickly evaluate and look and see what the current state of the world is, which is where I think those agents would help you come to those decisions a lot faster.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. The last thing I threw in here, which we kind of skipped over earlier, was this idea of the marketing campaigns, right? So based on purchase history, like what sort of marketing campaigns could I create to increase revenue? And so here's some suggestions. Like annual plan upsell, loyalty rewards, and I could even say like, okay, great, like um, create an email to promote the what do they call it, annual plan upsell, and include a Stripe line. I'm going to say link. We'll see. That's one thing that the agents are very good at, are figuring out my typos and misspellings. So
I definitely appreciate that from them.
there.
I'm a horrible texter, and then I use voice to text a lot, and I think even voice to text gets my things wrong. So definitely appreciate like any assistance that we could get from that perspective.
Totally. And so here's kind of a suggested email for this promotion to encourage folks to close out their invoices, pay ahead of time. And as a next step, I could even integrate some mail service. We like support
Sure.
for Gmail or other like bulk mailing sorts of things, or send this through
Yeah.
Stripe. There's lots of different ways to do that. But I think this is like a good like workspace where I can bring lots of different tools and services together, and sort of at my fingertips be able to reach out to all these different services and integrate them together through chat, which I think is pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And then I think that original question was asked from Tally, who is on YouTube. So Tally, hopefully that answered your question. You there you go. We proved that this was live, and you got a impromptu demo at the end of it. So hopefully that'll help you, either solve your problem or give you some inspiration of some of the cool things you could do with Hypermode and Stripe. Um, well, so super quick, before we shut off, do you have anything that you want to share with folks? Like, not that people have seen this video, not that they've watched the stream. Like, what do you want them to do? Anything that you want to promote and highlight for the things that you and your team are working on?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is like go create a Hypermode account, play around with agents, add some connections. We shared the free upgrade code, or you can also just click a link there to schedule like a quick onboarding session to upgrade to Pro Tier. We're really interested in feedback. I think while we're in beta with Hypermode agents, there are a couple of maybe resources that I think might be interesting that I'll share. We've been working on these like more domain specific tutorials. So here's an example. I'll drop this in the chat, of creating a sales agent. So I mentioned this idea earlier of if you're an account executive and you want help sort of scoring transcripts of your calls and applying a lead scoring framework, integrating with your CRM. I also wrote up a tutorial that we published, I think just this morning, is when I finished it, on very similar to what we showed today, like your first financial operations agent with working with Stripe. And this also walks through how to seed your sandbox, which I skipped over. I know that's something that I found challenging initially when I was working with test data, is like, how do I actually make this look realistic based on whatever kind of fake business I'm working with. And then the other thing I want to share really quick is the agent boot camp. This is a like 30-day of agent boot camp that we put together. The idea here is, if you're sort of like agent curious and don't know where to get started, we have kind of like daily challenges to kind of walk you through. Here's an example of like a productivity agent. Here's kind of a walkthrough on the concierge of like an agent to create your agents, building domain specific agents depending on your persona. So we have one for like finance and revenue operations, looking at Stripe, one for developers, data analytics, these sorts of things. And then week 4, we released, I think this week, I think we're currently in week 4, so we have one more week to go. But week 4, I think, is really interesting. This is context engineering, which is, I think, kind of an extension of prompt engineering, where that's part of it, like getting the system prompts and the agent's prompts correct, but also how can I do retrieval? So we showed kind of an example of this, of like fetching our internal policy data from Notion, like that sort of thing. But there are lots of other ways to manage context there. So anyway, that's probably the other resource I would mention, that folks may be interested in. I'll share a link to our Discord, if folks want to ping me directly, or just sort of chat with the community. That's a good resource as well. And then for folks watching on YouTube, we do have a YouTube channel where we do the occasional live stream similar to this. I think this is the right. Yeah, there we go. That's the right link.
Nice.
Drop that in the chat as well.
Cool.
And that probably covers it for sort of getting started resources. But I would encourage folks, just to sign up, create a free account, start creating agents, and share with us, how it's going, what do you actually want to create, and give us any feedback would be super helpful.
Awesome. So, Will, thank you so much for joining us. I definitely learned a lot about Hypermode today. One of the things I like to do is I like to invite guests on and sometimes not do any research, so that I can like have the authentic wow moments about, oh wow, this is a really cool product, right? And I honestly feel like this is a very cool product, and I really love to see how you're able to, very quickly iterate and create things, and then also kind of integrate Stripe and Notion and some of these other tools to start making people just be more productive. So again, thank you so much for coming on. For folks that are still watching, if you like this episode, definitely feel free to go ahead and try out Hypermode. Go ahead and hit the start now button and start building some cool stuff. Also, if you have any thoughts about future shows or episodes, stuff that you'd love to see us talk about, definitely feel free to let us know. We're going to be spending the next month or so primarily focused on a lot of different AI focused scenarios. So like I said, like if there's anything that you all might be probably interested in, or use cases, scenarios, business ideas that you think we should cover, definitely let us know. We'll do our best to try and get that on the schedule. But with that being said, thank you again all so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Awesome. Cheers, folks.